Hello, everyone. You've seen the stats, and now we hope to make the case for why accelerating action will lead to place supporting small and growing businesses front and center of national policy. Successfully supporting these SGBs requires cultivating entrepreneurial ecosystem, and ANDE is dedicated to doing just that by building a thriving network of people and organizations and supporting them through policy and program initiatives. We cannot do this without the active support of our partners across the region and are very grateful to them. Partners whose logos you will see throughout these 3 days, and many, many more who continue to support us every day in our work. Once again, a very warm welcome to all of you, and thank you for making the time to be here. We look forward to your active participation and feedback over the next 3 days.
All right, great. So good morning, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us on the first session of the day 3 of the South Asia Convening, where we're going to be talking about the network effect, empowering women entrepreneurs through cross-border networks. If you joined us early, you would have seen that statistic on the first slide where it talks about how in this particular region, in the Global Gender Gap Report states that the women labor force participation is the lowest across South Asia. In terms of a geographical region, also lowest ranking in terms of bridging economic disparities that we're seeing between men and women. So all the more important to have these discussions where we're talking about how can we bring more women into the labor force, how can we support more women entrepreneurs who are creating these kind of jobs, and that's precisely the kind of discussion we've lined up for you. We have some really stellar people speaking to the great work that they're doing across the region. and I would love for them to be able to speak for themselves. So with no further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Shantana from SAFAL Partners, who is going to take us through the rest of the discussion. Shantana, over to you.
Thank you, Sai Priya. I'm very happy to be here. Welcome, everyone, and thanks for joining. I'm Santona. I work at SAFAL Partners. SAFAL Partners is an operations-focused investment firm in Kathmandu, and we do work on angel investment in SMEs, economic development through private partnership, and management consulting. We have a very fantastic set of panelists with us here today. These panelists are the trailblazers, the doers, and the enablers, mentors, and if I may say so, as a common denominator, the champions in South Asia for starting and expanding vibrant and sustainable networks for women entrepreneurs with a focus on tech. Without any further ado, I'd like to first invite our first panelist, who's going to share her work and share her ideas on the topic today. We have our very esteemed Jihan Ara from Katalyst Labs. I think introducing Jahan would be introducing an icon. She has been leading Katalyst Lab, which is an accelerator and innovation hub for startups in Pakistan. And she's also been a former president of Pakistan Software House Association for IT and ITES, as we know it in the short form as PASHA, where she has actually worked towards making it a name known in the region and internationally. She's also a member of the World Bank's Gender Advisory Council, where she advocates for women in tech and advises government of Pakistan's largest province, Punjab, on IT. We are more than delighted to have Jahan here with us today. And Jahan, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Santana. Too long an introduction, I think. Can we have the deck up? Okay, so I wanted to explain this. Dots don't need to connect. And this comes from my hero, Steve Jobs, who said, you can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. So you have to trust that the dots will somehow connect in your future. You have to trust in something, your gut, destiny, life, karma, whatever. The approach has never let me down, he said, and it has made all the difference in my life. So I wanted to start with that. Hi, I'm Jahara. I am the founder and CEO of Katalyst Labs, which is a startup accelerator and a women's leadership program. So if we can move on to the next slide. Yeah. So I grew up in Hong Kong. So that's why you see all these. I don't even know what those characters say. I hope the team got it right. Otherwise, it could be something very rude. So having grown up in Hong Kong, I came back to Pakistan, where I was born in Karachi. And I joined a company, started a company with a couple of friends. It was a multimedia company in those days, very early, and joined Pasha soon after. So the next slide, please. So Pasha is, as Santana explained, it's the IT association here in Pakistan that represents the tech sector. And I joined it, and it was a strange time, because you walk into a room with about 100 people and you're the only woman in the room. The rest of them are all men. And yet I became very vocal, because I felt that somebody had to speak up for the women. And since I was the only one there, I had to make my points. And I think initially I created a lot of nervousness amongst the other members. But soon I started to visit universities. I started to visit, companies where there were women staff, but at the very low end, who were just entry level, or who were, just interns. And I spoke to them and I said, why aren't you rising in the ranks? You should be starting companies of your own. You should be taking on leadership roles at the companies where you are. And if you're a student, why aren't you aspiring to create a company of your own? And, the answer always was that we didn't know we could. So next slide is where I found a solution to that. So under the umbrella of Pasha, I decided to start the Nest.io, which was a technology incubator, thanks to funding received from Google, from Samsung, from the US State Department. We started this technology incubator and had students who were graduating come in and learn about what it took to convert their ideas into a business. So the first cohort, unfortunately, only had one woman. And so that really annoyed me because I said, you know, women are as capable of starting companies as men are. And although many of the men who joined the incubator were really nice, were really innovative, were very sharp, were willing to listen, and wanted to make a difference. But I wanted that to be more inclusive. And so I started to go to companies again, to go to universities again, to talk about how women could become company owners. And then by the end of the program, if you look at the next slide, we had 116 female founders. And you know, the 45 of them were actually leading the companies that were started. And so I felt that the work that we had done as an organization was really showing up in the results that we had. Next slide, this is sort of just a group picture. This was about building the community, not only convincing the women that they could become entrepreneurs, but also convincing the men that they could work under the leadership of women and that the companies would really be very powerful, would look at the country as a whole, because this country is 50% women. So how can you make decisions for those women about the products they need, about the kind of environment they want, about what is needed to create the kind of impact that's needed in the country. So it takes both men and women to do that. And that was the whole purpose of the exercise. So I just want to show you in the next few slides a few of the women leaders whom we created through this network. So Nadia Ganji, who was the only one in our first cohort. Remember, I spoke about the only woman who was in our first cohort at the Nest. That was Nadia. And Nadia then started SheOps while she was still with us. And that was an online platform for women who wanted to buy products, sell products, who wanted to be in a safe environment where they would not face the kind of harassment that they faced on other platforms. Now, Nadia, since then, has created FemPro under the Meta program, where she now guides women to start their own companies. She trains them. She has created such an impact in the community in Pakistan and through partnerships and collaboration across the world that it's just amazing to see one of our own go ahead and do that. So I just wanted to talk about Nadia. The next one that I wanted to speak about was Sana Shah. She started a network called ELN, which is the e-learning network. And she decided that, you know, everybody complained about the fact that the quality of education in the country was not what it should be, and that something should change. But nobody actually did anything about it. Well, not nobody, some people were trying. But she said, you know, we have to get to the crux of the situation. We have to make sure that the quality of teachers is up to par. And then we will find that the quality of students will also rise. So she started the e-learning network, and through online mediums as well as through physical means, she actually changed the situation by training as many women as she could. She started this platform in England as well as in Pakistan, and she sort of went from one place to another because her family was based in England, but she was part of the Nest incubation program. So she's done an amazing job, and now she's restructuring. We asked her to be here today, but she said, I'm restructuring. I don't want to talk about something that is not yet, you know, in its final stage, because I think something more needs to be done. So you see, women keep thinking about these things. Don't start something and just stay on the same track. If things need to be different, change it. The next person I wanted to talk about was Azima Dhanji. She's a social impact entrepreneur. When she came to the Nest, she was only 19 years old. She grew up with parents who have hearing disabilities, so they can't hear. So she said her first language was sign language. And she said, but I struggled. My brother and I struggled because we saw that every time our parents had to communicate with anyone, they needed us as interpreters. And we felt that they should not be dependent on us. So she went on to create Connect Here, which then created technology which allows people with hearing disabilities to communicate with people like you and me. And so they then have that independence. She also sold this technology to government, to banks, to large organizations, not just in Pakistan, but across the regions through collaborations. So she has created the kind of impact at this young age that many do not. So I wanted to really highlight what she has done. Her co-founder, Arham, is her friend and also went to school with her and then went to a program with her overseas. So these kind of connections that you make internationally or at events where you are sort of thrown together, that lasts you a long time. And Azima and Ahram use that network very well. The last one that I wanted to highlight here is Sabah Khalid. She was a journalist, and then she joined our program and said, I want to make a difference by creating products and talking about products which talk about female hygiene. And this is a taboo subject in Pakistan. And she said, I want to make sure that it doesn't remain a taboo subject because it is something that needs to be talked about. There need to be solutions found, and so that women can lead a normal life. And she did just that. And she then traveled across the world to create an impact, not just in conversations here, but in different countries around the world. She's at the moment at UNICEF as a consultant in New York. So she has grown from those early days when she was a startup founder and struggled to have people take her seriously. So these are 4 stories out of many of women who have started something because they felt there was a need, and they have achieved quite a bit, as you can see. Next slide, please. So the Nest.io was also part of the Google for Startups Acceleration Program. And the reason that I wanted to talk about this is because being part of the acceleration program meant that you were part of the partner network, which meant that you could then work with each other, women in different countries, on training, on connections, on working on projects or bidding for projects that you could possibly not bid for alone. So that network has become very powerful from day one. And even now, we are connected with many of the companies and founders from across the network. And what we have done is, as incubators and accelerators, we have connected the people from those programs with our own founders as well. So this has then accelerated that program even more. So I just wanted to talk about that. I think the power of such networks is really very important. Now, next, 3 years ago, I started Katalyst Labs. And the reason for starting that was incubation worked very well and produced a lot of successes. Yes, there were failures, as there is with any program that includes startups. But then now at this stage, we needed to accelerate that process and work with companies that had survived to make sure they scaled, make sure that they had the right mentors, made sure that they got investment, made sure also that they then expanded to other regions. And that was the reason for starting Katalyst Labs. The second reason was that I felt very strongly that even now, women had joined businesses, had started businesses, but many of them were not rising beyond mid-management level. And so we started the Women's Leadership Program. If we can just go further down. So I'll talk about 0 to 1 Disrupt a little later. But if we can go to the third slide, the Women's Leadership Fellows Program was meant to work with women who actually were in mid-management and who needed some help to grow in the jobs in which they were. And they needed support. So the number one thing, now I'll tell you what the program included if we go on to the next slide. there was a need because women needed some peer support. And, women don't have a network. Men have business networks, women do not. And that then deprives them of a lot of opportunities that they should otherwise have access to. They also have limited avenues for raising funding if they have started a business. They, the balance that they need to create between their personal lives and their work, it requires that they have to put in that additional effort. And knowing that there are other women who are going through that same thing, knowing that there are things that they have done in order to conquer those challenges, learning from them and having them as peers helps. So we felt that we should, try and help these women. The program actually, which you will see on the next slide, includes, we actually work with each woman one-on-one. My team does a SWOT analysis because each woman, though similar, is also very different. So they do a SWOT analysis, finds out what it is that is holding them back. What are they thinking? What do they need? And then we work with them collectively and individually on building their confidence, because that is one thing that many women face, a lack of confidence. They feel they cannot go beyond a certain stage in their careers. They feel that, that's all they know, and they don't think that they are capable. Whereas men who know even less than them very often just volunteer for promotions, for work that they cannot possibly do to the level that is required. So, this program, month one, is actually dedicated to doing that, making them believe that they can do anything they want, making them believe that they are capable, and helping that build that confidence. So the imposter syndrome in month two is further worked on. And then we take them through training on adaptive leadership, on personal branding, on learning from mistakes that they have made, because all of us make mistakes and there are failures. But if you learn from them and then apply them to what you do next, then it becomes a lot easier for you to grow in whatever you're doing. In month three, what we teach them is, okay, you've started a company. How to effectively hire people who will help your company to grow. We take them through a design thinking program. We help them figure out how they can build and expand and maintain their partnerships. And that, that helps them then expand their network. So it's a 3-month program, sometimes grows into 4 months, but it helps them become much more enabled and able to grow into better positions. From the results that we have seen, from feedback that we have had from the women fellows, we have found out that many of them have applied this to their current jobs or have changed jobs because they felt that they were going to be held back and that it has impacted their careers significantly. So that's good to know. Of course, it doesn't happen immediately. You have to continue to apply it, and they know that. Okay, so I wanted to talk a little bit about the other programs that we work on, which is on the next slide. So this is specifically for entrepreneurs. We have worked with Procter & Gamble on the We Grow program, which what it means is large organizations, multinationals, have a lot of work that they don't necessarily need to do in-house. What they can actually outsource this to entrepreneurs who are already working in those areas. So if they want something done in the area of recruitment and they want a new product made, and some entrepreneur that within our network actually has a product already, why don't they just take that product and adapt it to their needs? So that was the We Grow program, and several of the entrepreneurs within our network have actually been able to benefit from that. Currently, we are doing a program in 7 cities of Pakistan, which is a program led by Visa. It's called She's Next, and it is supported by HBL, which is the biggest bank in Pakistan. And what that involves is that we work with women entrepreneurs who have had businesses for about a year, a certain amount of revenue, and are growing. And what they need is they need to expand their network, they need a little bit of funding, And Visa will select 5 such businesses and will invest in them. And Katalyst Labs will be involved in helping to mentor them through the next 6 months to ensure that their businesses grow. So this is a program that we at Katalyst Labs are very excited about, because it means that we can actually help the businesses that are within our network to grow and to expand and be able to help other people. So that's the whole idea. If you learn, if you get mentoring or you get support from someone or some organization, make sure that you pay it back, that you are able to help other people. We also then do other things like having conversations, so online conversations called catalyzing conversations, where we interview women role models. We talk to them and ask them about their journey. So in Pakistan, there are some women, no doubt we need more, but some women who have risen to the top, who've been, we've had a governor State Bank of Pakistan who was a woman. Now she's the Minister of Finance. We have a woman who's running an infrastructure company. We have women who have been heads of organizations like Unilever. And so we bring them in and say, okay, did you always know? Were you always able to do this? Did you have the confidence? What did you have to do to rise to the top? And they talk about the struggles, the challenges, and how they were able to then overcome them and get to where they were. And those lessons help these founders quite a lot. And we also bring in male founders who talk about, how women from within their networks help them to grow into the positions that they are in now. So the current chairman of Unilever had worked with the 2 women who had led Unilever initially. And he said, what I am today is what they taught me. And that is really powerful stuff for these women to know, that there were women who were responsible for the growth of a man who is now leading one of the largest companies here in Pakistan. So these kind of things are very important. These conversations need to be had. It also helps expand their networks, brings them in, in front of people who become their role models and who are willing to talk to them and mentor them. Naturally, not endlessly, but to some extent. If they are serious about mentoring, then many of these people are willing to help. So these are things that we do as Katalyst Labs to make sure that people connect, to make sure that people grow, and that we can then create many more such amazing people who can help others. So that's all that I wanted to say. It's it's something that we continue to change as well as an organization. Anything that is needed, anything that is new, we make sure that we adopt that and make sure that we make it accessible to our entire network. And the network, from the Nest to initially to Pasha and now to Katalyst Labs, that community continues to grow. It is not that just because I have left one organization or I'm no longer part of it, that I no longer meet with those people. Their problems change, their challenges change, and they know that our network is available there to help them at any stage of their journey. So thank you.
Thank you, Jahan. Your presentation reminds me of this quotation, leaders create new leaders. We'll have more conversation regarding your presentation, and we have some questions also for you already, which we'll take towards the end of this session. Heading next, I'd like to invite Christopher T., who is leading the program management at Accelerating Asia, based in Singapore. Accelerating Asia is a leading early stage venture capital fund in Southeast Asia and South Asia, with a focus on pre-Series A startups. So Chris, the floor is yours.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Santona, for that introduction. And it's also really great to see Santona and Pulani on the call, because they are also very much part of the family of the program that I'm going to present on next. So if we could go to the next slide, please. So today I have the privilege and the pleasure to talk about the South Asia Regional Digital Initiative. Could we go to the next slide, please? Yeah, there we go. And so the Saudi Women Entrepreneur Scale Program, or We Scale program, is actually sponsored and supported by USAID, DAI, and the DCCP initiative, which is a product of the two larger organizations as well. So earlier this year, from January all the way until July, we actually came together as a consortia together with Bangladesh Angels, India Accelerator, Lankan Angel Network, and of course, SAFAL Partners as well, to roll out a specific accelerator tailored for women entrepreneurs in the tech space as well. If you go to the next slide, please. Okay, so I'm just going to give everyone a quick snapshot of what the WeScale program was in case you haven't heard about it before. So essentially, this particular program aimed to support 100 South Asian women entrepreneurs. So it did start as a very large cohort in the first phase of the program who were leveraging tech in growing and scaling their business. I think the awesome thing about this program is that it was industry agnostic. So regardless of which industry you were in or regardless of which vertical you were in, you could definitely sign up and participate. The other thing that I think also really opened up the doors or opened up these opportunities for different female founders as well was the fact that a lot of these people were coming at different stages. So on the earlier end of things, we had people who were on the proof of concept or on the minimum viable product side. At the other end of the spectrum, we had female founders with thriving businesses. They were gaining traction. They had a lot of history of revenue as well. So we had a wide range of different kinds of female founders participating in the program, and we were targeting Bangladesh, India, Nepal, and Sri Lanka as well as the 4 South Asian countries for this particular program. The program ran over 2 different phases. So in phase 1, it was a 3-month-long accelerator program. And again, the aim was to give these different female founders masterclasses, panels, different kinds of workshops, and different kinds of networking and engagement events as well to really help them leverage on technology or leverage on technology more and perhaps in new ways for the business to really allow them to grow and scale. And of course, besides having online programming, I think the great thing about having 4 consortia partners that all have office sort of in country, in person as well, is that we could also supplement the program with a lot of in-person events where the different female founders and also all of the consortia partners could actually meet and say hi and have a chat together over a meal or over a drink as well. So some of the in-country events that happened over this period included networking with each other and with different ecosystem players that each of the consortia networks also brought to the table, and of course, different mentoring sessions that happen across the program as well. In phase 2, what happened is that we took the top 20 performing women entrepreneurs and female founders in phase 1, and we put them into a shorter accelerator program that was 4 weeks long this time around, and really to give them the resources, the support, and the network to get them investment ready. So the aim for the second phase was really more about how fast could we get them ready to put them in front of investors so that their companies and their businesses would be investment grade as soon as possible. So in this second phase of the program, 3 weeks of it was online, and the last week we spent in person together in New Delhi, which I'll talk about a little bit later as well. And again, there were other in-country elements as well. So again, thanks to the generous support of our consortia partners, we were able to hold localized pitch clinics in each of the different countries. So again, the women entrepreneurs could continue to meet up, they can continue to grow their networks, and they could continue to receive support from existing mentors and also the consortia partner as well in country. Lastly, the grand sort of event that concluded the entire WeScale program, so this includes also phase 2 as well, and the entirety of the whole initiative was a 3-day summit in New Delhi that we had in July this year. Interestingly enough, or coincidentally enough, it was timed with the Indian monsoon season. So as we welcome the top 20 performing women entrepreneurs into the 3-day summit, we also welcome, I think, the record rainfall that New Delhi received in the last 40 years as well, which just goes to show that, you know, these women entrepreneurs and these female business owners mean business. And so the weather was very much sort of echoing that support as well. They literally brought the thunder to New Delhi. So again, in this last 3-day sort of like sprint leading up to an investor showcase and networking session at the end of it all, we brought the 20 women entrepreneurs together for the final set of masterclasses. I think it was also a great way after 4 months of digital programming for all of them to finally meet each other in person across borders and across different countries as well. All right, if you can go to the next slide, please. So when we're thinking about the benefits or the different ways in which multi-country relationships can actually manifest and the way that different people can benefit from it, I think it would be sort of remiss not to think about both leveraging some of the similarities and also leveraging some of the differences in who comprises this network. So I'll start with the similarities first. So although it may sound pretty obvious that, you know, all of them in this cross-border network are female founders and female business owners in South Asia, I think that when we were there in New Delhi itself at the summit, and just to see every seat at the table or every seat in the room occupied by a South Asian female founder or South Asian business owner, I think is really a rarity in and of itself. And so that kind of like effervescence, that kind of spirit, the kind of camaraderie that really comes out of that, a room full of women in, I guess, an industry that is typically quite male dominated, is an incredible, I think, display of both sort of community and also of solidarity as well. And I think over the 3 days, through both the formal and informal networking opportunities, there was a lot of community and a lot of connections that were being built, both by some of the shared challenges and also some of the shared joys and the shared wins that they also had with each other. So I managed to sort of, I think, listen in to some of the conversations as we were going around running the program, but definitely different conversations about how to close deals, how to raise funds, how do they want to pitch to an international audience, which I think was the first time that a lot of the participants were doing in this particular summit. I think all brought up a lot of interesting sort of like points, questions, perspectives, and challenges as well as we went through the 3-day summit. And of course, I think the last thing that we cannot sort of overlook as well is that because all of these different female founders and women entrepreneurs were coming from such different perspectives, such different backgrounds, such different stages of business maturity, there was a lot of different, I think, perspective and analysis offered from different points of view. So I think one of the things that Jahan talked about a little bit earlier, and I think there's already a question that has come through the Q&A inbox about this, right? What are the different sort of like social challenges that female entrepreneurs meet? What are some of the kind of unfair cultural expectations or kind of the unfair like cultural assumptions that are made of female entrepreneurs as they're trying to run the business versus, let's say, oh, settling down quickly or starting a family very quickly as well, and how to sort of get over some of these difficult conversations, how to battle some of these stereotypes, I think was also coming out front and center in some of the closed doors discussions that also happened during the summit as well. But again, it is a rarity, I think, to have that network where 20 women can come together and talk about all of these common challenges that they face on pretty much a day-to-day basis in their own communities as well. So some of the things that also came out, of course, when you bring 20 women across 4 different countries are, of course, some regional differences from each of their own home countries as well. So I think when we're thinking about the business point of view, obviously, a lot of them were coming from various business stages. So I think even if we're looking at the challenge of building traction at the MVP or at the seed level versus another business owner who was coming in at the post-seed or pre-A level also looks quite different from time to time. So having those conversations and those different perspectives was really helpful for them as well. Obviously, when we look at Sri Lanka, India, Nepal, and Bangladesh, the entrepreneurship ecosystem maturity is different across the 4 countries. And so when we're thinking about how do we access resources, who are the people who can actually run accelerators or give grants or can actually release funding, what does the investment landscape look like? Are there even companies or firms that have gender lens investment practices or thesis in their own VCs and CVCs as well? All of these different sort of nuances in each country also come up across these conversations cross-border. Of course, all of our fantastic participants also come with very, very different professional experiences. Some of them have been in the corporate world for a very long time. Some of them have started their businesses from a couple of years ago as projects that have evolved out of their university days as well. So again, the kinds of different backgrounds, the kinds of different experiences really are very rich in terms of the perspectives that they can bring to the table. And lastly, I think one of the things that I also managed to kind of observe informally was the fact that a lot of these women entrepreneurs were kind of helping each other on a one-on-one basis in terms of how they pitch to investors and how they develop those relationships as well, which was a really kind of like nice organic thing to see developing because we had 20 of them in the same place together for 3 days. Okay, if we can go to the next slide, please. Okay. So now I think one slide back, sorry. There should be another slide about limitations. No? Okay, no worries about it. I can talk you through some of the limitations as well. So one of the things that we definitely looked at was national gating. So are there ways in which either resources, funding, or grants and other kinds of maybe non-monetary support are targeted at only in-country participants versus participants that could come from any country. And the last thing that we also talked about when we think about national gating is that when we think about trade flows and we think about really organizations, whether they're government, corporate, or development, that can really support the expansion of businesses, are we looking at, let's say, a business chamber or a trade chamber that is really looking at pushing in-country businesses out? Or are we looking at a different kind of economic or investment trade agency that is looking to bring external businesses in when we think about cross-border? So again, trying to find the right players and the right ecosystem support members to really help these different female founders grow and expand their businesses cross-border as well. We did have quite a number of conversations that just because something works in Sri Lanka doesn't mean that it will work in India, doesn't mean that it will also work in Bangladesh as well. So I think when we think about a lot of these go-to-market strategies or how to actually acquire new customers, different revenue streams, there isn't this simple sort of copying and pasting model that works across different countries. And so when we're thinking about cross-borders, we also have to think about localization and how that works for the markets that they're trying to capture as well. I think the third sort of like clear limit is the one about navigating bureaucracy, which I know is like never fun. So even if it's as something as simple as how do I remit money from one currency into another currency over a border, what are some of the very nitty-gritty and real world challenges of trying to send money from one bank into another bank? I think there were many, many conversations about that. And also any other aspect of setting up the business, from legal support to hiring to composing your leadership board, or whether you want to set up a brand new entity in that particular destination country as well. And all of these conversations also came up to the table, and different strategies that women entrepreneurs could or could not use in order to set up those new foreign entities. And of course, the last one is that even now, that we are about 4 or 5 months after the program has actually concluded, I think one of the things that has always been top of mind, and like Santona and myself have talked about this many times during the program as well, is to really how to keep the network going, because all of us have now back in our home countries, we're all back in our home communities. So a lot of the network now lives and still breathes online through Facebook, through WhatsApp, through different website pages. And a lot of it also happens through LinkedIn as well, when someone celebrates a milestone or when someone launches a new part of their business. And so you'll get a round of like congratulations in a WhatsApp group saying like, yay, well done, you've worked on this for so long. And now you've got it off the ground as well. So there's still a lot of like social support in that sense, which is a really great way and a really easy way to keep the network going. But definitely because we're not in the same country and we're not spending so much time in person anymore, I think keeping those relationships alive and keeping those networks alive also becomes a challenge, but also I think a real opportunity as well to exploit. And of course, lastly, just keeping communications alive as well as time goes forward. So let's see how we can. I think we're doing good so far. We always are wishing each other sort of like around the festivities, any like national holiday, any public holiday, but also a lot of outpouring of concern whenever anything untoward happens in any of our countries as well. So it's a really good way to keep the network going in quite an organic manner as well. And lastly, just to round off this particular spotlight with some practical tips about how to maintain or how to create cross-border networks. So one, I think definitely being able to decide on the clear aims and goals of the network would be very helpful in terms of making sure everyone is on the same page and managing expectations as well. So maybe you want to create a network that basically fosters collaboration. That's great. Maybe you want to create a network that also, really focuses on knowledge sharing. Like, hey, there's this particular program that would be great for you, or this particular grant that could be a good fit for your business. Those things are also fantastic aims of any particular network. Other things that you may want to think about as well are just the platform. Do you want to have it spread across mainly social media platforms, which is free and typically accessible to most people? Or do you want something else that is slightly different, that's a bit more permanent, that may or may not cost money as well? So some of these questions about which platform or which platforms do you want to use for engagement and communication could also be quite interesting as you think about building and maintaining some of these networks. Thirdly, when you're thinking about the value generated, I think it often goes back to a question of managing expectations as well. So when everyone is on the same page about what they can contribute to the network and what they are hoping to take away from the network, the kinds of suggestions, the kinds of introductions, and the kinds of material and content that really come through will be of a much higher quality and also much more targeted at the participants who are in the network, and also constantly building that ecosystem as well. So it could be something as simple as what kinds of information or what kinds of resources would be helpful to the rest of the group, or what kinds of introductions could be helpful. Is it a potential buyer? Is it a potential ecosystem player? Is it a potential investor? So simple questions as these could be really helpful in the long run as well. And then lastly, from a very, very practical point of view, we also think quite a bit about the network form and the membership as well. So do we want to, kind of have a more centralized operating model, or do we want to have a more decentralized operating model, which is what happened, I think, because of our nature of the consortia, right? So we have in-person offices, we have in-person folks in Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India, Nepal. So that makes the most sense for us. But of course, every network is slightly different. Every community gathers together for a slightly different reason. So again, just thinking about network form and membership could also really help set the group up for success in the long run. All right, if we could go to the next slide, I think that should be it from me. Yes. So then I'll just hand the time back over to Santona, who will walk us through the rest of the program.
Thank you, Chris, for that wonderful presentation. And let me share with the audience and you as well that some of our women entrepreneurs who are a part of the cohort of the SARDI project, and also our colleagues from Consortium Partners have also joined us in this session, as they have mentioned in the WhatsApp group, the group WhatsApp that we have that keeps buzzing, thanks to God, and we are still in touch. So yes, thank you, Jahan, and thank you, Chris, for that very insightful presentations. And with that, now I would like to invite our two entrepreneurs on board to this session, Pulani Rana Singhe from Sri Lanka and Laiba Amir from Pakistan. A little bit of introduction to both of them. Pulani Rana Singhe, she's the founder and CEO of Loons Lab, a company into health tech development. Loons Lab has successfully completed many island-wide projects in Sri Lanka. Pulani also leads /Com Women Technopreneurs Forum that empowers women entrepreneurs and women in tech. Welcome, Pulani. Thank you for joining us. And live, yeah.
Thanks a lot, Santana, and everyone for having me as well. Pleasure to be.
Great. And another entrepreneur with us is Laiba Amir. She's the CEO and co-founder of Closed Store. And they like to call it the Airbnb of fashion. Welcome, Laiba.
Hi, thank you, Santana, for having me today.
Yes. So, Pulani, you are a part of the SARDI project on which WeScale and WeScale Plus program, to be more specific, on which Chris just made such an elaborate presentation. And Laiba, you are also, I think you've worked with Katalyst Labs. They've been of support to you. So in that sense, now that we have done the presentation, I'd like to start with Pulani and ask the question, so what has been your key takeaways from these, participating in these kind of programs and getting the kind of access to women networks and cross-border networks?
Yeah, definitely. I think that's something that we can actually tell in like little bit of time like this. So basically, I think the greatest getaway for myself is like building the confidence and the leadership skills. So because like when we all came here, so we were like, we knew about our businesses and we were like doing our business for years and years in our own countries. But when we reached like the South Asian platform where there are like a lot of other entrepreneurs, then it was like totally something new to us. So, and we were a little scared at first as well, like how would they be, how would the atmosphere and everything would be. But surprising, everyone was very welcoming. And the biggest realization for me was actually realizing that all of us are same in many ways. Although we are from different countries, different cultures, we are experiencing totally different things. But when it comes to entrepreneurship journey and the problems that we have faced, so it was like not much different from one another. So there was so much in common that we could share instantly, and then we could connect with each other very instantly. So I believe like is one of the best chances that I got to know like these network of entrepreneurs and like people like Chris and also SAFAL, Santona, and then then I think like we really was able to develop a lot within ourselves, especially like how to become a leader and how to handle something when it's like from overseas, how to blend in different cultures, and how to like understand different cultures in different ways. Sometimes the words, like how we should speak to them, and what are the same languages that we can speak, and what are the differences that we have. So all of these were actually, I think it's an experience that I cannot put into words. So it is like immense experience that we got through it, and also the networking opportunities that we got. So they were, I think they were huge, because like all these, like the Accelerating Asia and everyone who connected with us was some people that we cannot actually reach via a LinkedIn message or via an email. So when we got there, when we had the opportunity to talk to different people and different investors and get their opinions, we might not be like getting an investment per se, but still the journey that you go through in doing the presentations and like facing them and talking to them, and especially in cross borders, when keeping aside like our own country. So I think that was an amazing experience for me. For me, like the key takeaway is the confidence that I gained through it, and the network. I would say it's not just a network of like the entrepreneurs, but it's just a network of friends. Like whenever we have something, like we can like reach to them like instantly, and we can instantly get connected. So I think the experience and the network and the people I met were amazing.
Wow, thank you, Pulani. And I'd like to go to Laiva now with the same question. What has your experience been like? What are the opportunities that has come your way with access to such networks?
So Santana, I'd first like to mention that I was a part of the cohort 8 at the Nest.io, which was previously run by Jahan herself. And I would say that I had just come out of university fresh, and that is when I started Closet, like in my final year of university. So back then, we did not have any connections, any idea on how business models would actually work, what are the options. And so we stumbled upon this program by the Nest.io as an incubator. So we, signed up. There were a lot of amazing startups that were pitching. And luckily enough, Jihan and the team saw potential in me and my co-founders, and she selected us to be a part of the cohort. And that is one of the very first moments when Closet actually started to become a reality, when she and the team trusted us, and they provided us the resources to actually grow our business, learn more about what we can do and how we can do it. One more thing that networks within the Nest.io and outside brought to us was the credibility, right? So when you're talking to somebody, if I'm talking to somebody and they ask me, how I started off, or if I had joined some program, and if I mentioned Nest.io, or if I mentioned that I know Jahan knows me personally, then that becomes a completely different conversation, right? Because then there's like a trust that's established right there and then. And even when I'm filling like forms and things these days, even now, right? So one of the first references that I have is of Jahan, of course, and I know that she might put in a good word for me there. So the networks, it's like, again, networks are meant to be networks, right? So from one person you jump on to 15 other people, and then from 15 other people you'd go on to 30 other people, and the network keeps on going. So Jahan was one of those first persons who I from whom I understood that the importance of networks. I am a very selective extrovert. I don't talk a lot to many people, and in networking events, I just stand like this, right? So she was, and her team was one of the few people who actually, Munib from her team actually pushed me to go out and reach to investors, because I would just stay there scared, because I was one of the youngest members of the cohort back then as well. And it was really intimidating to be in conversations with investors who were particularly male. So in Pakistan, as of now, even there's just one prominent female-led VC, that's Invest to Innovate, and otherwise there's like male. It's a male-dominated market, right? So Jahan and the team actually gave us the confidence to move ahead, talk to all of these people, and leverage the connections that she and the Nest.io had. So I think it was an amazing experience, and I'm still grateful to Jehan and of course the team for all that they put into the business, and that is why we're still operational.
Well, wonderful. One thing that just setting a little bit of context, we are trying to sell Jahan because she doesn't like to be talking much, but I don't know how much we'll be able to do that. But Jahan, coming back to your presentation, you said that there isn't much network for women entrepreneurs, and I think every one of us agree to that. In terms of networking skills, I think what women lack is they lack the network, like you mentioned, but they also lack they lack the incentive or the encouragement to go and network, make a network of their own, and they also lack the know-how because they've never been pushed to do that. So in that sense, there's a question in our chat section from our audience that says that there's so much of social construct to fight against, that maybe raising an investment becomes a higher priority thing than forming a network. I just would like to get some insights from you on this.
So that's true. And women are less likely to put themselves forward. But the thing is, if you don't have a network, then raising an investment becomes more difficult because you don't know who to approach. You don't know what kind of sectors they are investing in. And also, the more people you know, the more you learn from them. So, I didn't speak about the conference that we hold, which we held about 10 days ago. It's called +92 Disrupt. And there were about 1,200 people from the startup ecosystem who were part of it. So speakers, investors, startups, professionals who wanted to now start their own companies. And what happens is, if you don't network, then these conferences are useless for you. If you don't put yourself forward, say, hi, I'm so-and-so, and I have this question, then you start a relationship. Once you start a relationship with one person, doesn't have to be an investor. It can be a mentor who can guide you. It can be an investor, or he or she can connect you with an investor that they know who's looking for some startup like yourself. So I think it's extremely important to get over that shyness. It's not easy. It's hard to understand, but I am also an introvert. And each time I have to put myself forward, it is difficult. And you sort of shake inside and you think, how can I do this? But you have to. If you are going to grow your business, if you're going to grow as an individual, you need to make that move. And yes, investments come later. You cannot raise an investment without first increasing the size of your network. That's my take on this.
Thanks, Jahan. And let's keep the conversation continuing. So I think a lot of conversation in the chat section is, on the change of the landscape, after programs like Sardi or after programs like Katalyst Lab or Nest.io coming in, what has changed, what remains as the gaps, they still continue to be, out there as gaps in the ecosystem in terms of support to the women entrepreneurs. But before we go to that question, let me take a step back and I think a moment to right now acknowledge that probably this is one of the few first conversations where women entrepreneurs and enablers like Chris and Asad in Asia, investors, and Jahan, we are coming together and discussing on women networking, cross-border networking. So I think we are all at the nascent stage in terms of these conversations for women entrepreneurs. So in that sense, first let me go to Laiba maybe and ask, what actually means support for women entrepreneurs? What exactly is network effect for women entrepreneurs? We had the idea about it before we joined a program like Katalyst Lab or Nest.io or Sardi for that matter, WeScale and WeScale Plus. Now that you have joined, post the experience, how would you define that for women entrepreneurs in our region?
So I feel a lot of women, including me, within Pakistan and similar regions, have this imposter syndrome, right? That, if I'm at this stage, I don't deserve it. I'm not doing anything to do it. Whereas my co-founder, who's a male, and he's always on top, right? He's like, what's the big deal? You can do it easily, and you have done it. You deserve this. But I never feel that. So prior to the program, of course, that was something that was continuously, bugging me, as I was the face of the company back then as well, and now too. And then after the program, I was able to get over the fact that it's okay, I can do it, I know how to do it, I'm the person doing it, so it's just me. So that's one thing that came out of the program. And then the networks helped us to build again further networks, A, and B, to learn a lot of different things from the different startups that were sitting there within the space. So there were travel startups, there were edtech startups, there were women with children. In my cohort, there was I don't exactly remember her name. So she was a teacher basically, and she had like 4 children. 3 went to school. The fourth one was maybe like 3 months old when they had joined the cohort. And I was able to learn work life balance from her, and how she was actually managing the entire thing herself with her husband, who was her co-founder. And I realized that there were a lot of opportunities for women when I joined the program, because I came to know about the grants that were being offered, the programs that were being offered by USAID, by Karandas, by a lot of different organizations. And that is how I knew how I can apply and get the capital that I needed for the business to grow. And so I did that.
Great. Pulani, then I'll bring the same question to you. You know, I mean, one of the discussions we had during our Rescale Plus Summit in India was women always talk on the soft metric side, you know, the network, the confidence. While it's very much the most important thing, but, you know, sometimes the conversations, they always talk about these metrics and not the hard metrics, like how much was the capital raised by, what was the customer expansion like, the market expansion like, in terms of hard numbers. What's your take on this?
Yeah, I absolutely agree, like 100%, because there's a tendency that women are always like afraid to go somewhere, and like, I don't know, speaking about myself, I'm not afraid to speak about my business, but when it comes to financials, I was always, you know, like, I just always wanted to like get someone's support when speaking, or like to, you know, in speaking to an investor, I was like a little nervous than speaking to a normal person. So I think those kind of things, and actually, like, you know, like, I have been an entrepreneur for a long time, but when it comes to Saadi only, I think I was able to do a fully fully fledged investor pitch. I was able to create it, and then like to get an understanding about how to value and how to how to really present it to an investor. So it was like a demonstration that actually brought to us like before like how to really, you know, prepare ourselves to go into an investor or talk to an investor, how to speak their language. I remember like Chris did a session, we didn't understood a single word of it, like, you know, about all the investments and like what are the series A and what is it called and everything. So I think that was like, those are some really eye-openers that we as females got. And I'm sure like with me, there were like many people who like, that was the first time they were actually pitching. And for myself, it was the first time that I was like focusing on financials and like getting it right and getting like how much should I ask for, some things like that. And I think I should really mention about the facilitators as well, because before the investor pitch, actually, like our mentors like was helping us one-to-one, and even I thought I was bugging her like at 11 p.m. in the night, but then I realized like some people were actually calling her at around 2 a.m. or like somewhere around that time and preparing with the pitch and all that. So it was like a lot of effort that they put in, like especially for these one-to-ones and to making it a success through these one-to-one conversations. So I believe like for your question, Santona, that is something that should be really emphasized by all these programs, because that's where we actually like, because women are like always, you know, like talking on the soft side about like everything that is going nice, and we are always afraid to speak about, you know, the back end, or like how we are really juggling between work, juggling between different things, and how we are managing the finances. So those are like the taboo areas for like any female entrepreneur, or like most of the entrepreneurs, I would say. So yeah, I think those are like really eye openers, and I'm like really grateful for all of them.
Sure. We'll keep the conversation going, but at this point, let me invite our bonus guest here, Mumtaz Falil. She's the country director at the World University Service of Canada, WUSC. Mumtaz, welcome, and you're doing a great job in Sri Lanka as well in terms of forming and expanding such networks. Would be great to hear from you. Mumtaz?
Shandana, I think Mumtaz just joined. Hi.
Just joined. Hi, everybody. Thank you for having me. Hi, Santona.
Shandana, I think you have to repeat the question. She just joined in.
Yes, I just joined, so I may have missed your question.
Sure, no issues. We are discussing on the network effect, developing cross-border networks for our women entrepreneurs. And I know that in Sri Lanka, you're doing a great job in forming and expanding such networks. So we just like to learn more from you about your work, the great work you're doing there.
Thank you so much. Yeah, so WUSC is embarking on a sort of a 6-year project to support specifically a gender-responsive entrepreneurial ecosystem. And a lot of the things both Pulani mentioned was really some of the things that came out when we looked at designing the project in how, you know, there's lack of mentors. Like if you Google, and I'm sure this is something Pulani probably sees every day. If you look, even Google investor forums, mentors, accelerator programs, you would see a very male-dominated space. And this is very daunting for aspiring entrepreneurs, but also existing entrepreneurs. And some of the work that we are hoping to do is to sort of really sort of bring it down to like a district regional level, to start regional forums, district forums, really to look at mentoring, to support women. Because, you know, sometimes you think you're the only one doing this or you haven't failed. I think one of the entrepreneurs we had an early discussion was like fail fast and fail cheap, right? These are really, really important information that, you know, sometimes women entrepreneurs don't have access to, don't have mentors. So when we did the scoping of the ecosystem in Sri Lanka, we realized the big asks from women entrepreneurs were, we need mentors whom we can call even at 1 o'clock in the morning, who will give me an advice before I go to an investor tomorrow, who will just tell me I can do this, re-emphasize that this is your idea, your design, your enterprise. Don't lose that to somebody else simply because, you know, we are all introverts. I hate public speaking, but if I have to speak on behalf of entrepreneurs, that's a motivation, right? And your business is your motivation. So, and a lot of women also employ other women. So how do we sort of really strengthen that support network, create a group of mentors, which is really lacking in Sri Lanka right now for multiple reasons, but also we are focusing a little bit in the northern province with the new initiative. So there's a lot of cultural, gendered, and social norms that are creating barriers for women entrepreneurs. Even we have to be really careful about where the networks are set up. Sometimes they don't, even if you invite them, they can't participate in it because there are so strong sort of social cultural norms that don't allow women to participate. So how do we actually take the network to them and sort of really build it among those peers who can really support them, who can tell them the journey, talk about their own failures, saying we failed, this is not our first enterprise, this is not our first, you know, we've gone to 5 investors and we've never got a cent, right? And we've been struggling to get market access. Those are powerful stories. And we're trying to sort of do 2 initiatives called V-Hub, where the women will have different support services, mentors, people coming to sort of provide small business ideas, as well as sort of business related support, legal services, legal financial services. So there is like a one-stop hub for entrepreneurs to sort of really get some of those services, but also create that into a space where women can come safely and make it as a recognized safe space for women, so that community starts to accept that this is an enterprise development space and start accepting that they can sort of access these spaces, go to these forums, go to those networks. So a big part of the work that we will do is look at social marketing, addressing some of the harmful gender and social norms that would that create barriers for women entrepreneurs in Sri Lanka. But a big part is to sort of bring in successful entrepreneurs to become mentors, look at creating female fund managers, female-led sort of funds, gender-responsive funds in Sri Lanka, so that entrepreneurs, women entrepreneurs, can be supported more. And hopefully, Pulani can come in a couple of years and say, "Hey, guess what? We have a network. We have investors that are, who are seated around the table. They're all women, and we can go up to them and have those conversations." And another piece is the translation function that we will discuss. But I think we spoke about a regional network, and what WUSC is trying to do is bring it down to like district and in-country regional levels, especially to sort of tackle the accessibility and prevention of women sort of really going to these networks due to gender and social norms. Sorry, that was a lot, but I
No,
hope
that
was
was so
okay.
insightful. And it just always, I take a moment to think that it's so similar across like all the countries. It's the same with Nepal as well. So, as we're making these conversations and efforts in, forming these networks, I think a very crucial question comes and has come back. It has been in the chat as well from our audiences. Who owns this kind of networks? How do you keep it going? And that was one of the very important conversations we had at the end of BScale Plus program with the consortium partners from Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, India, and with Accelerating Asia. Like, who owns it? What's going to be the approach? So, Chris, I'll take it to you. How do you keep network like this sustaining? What's your take on that?
Sure, Santona. And I think both Jahan and I tried answering that question in the Q&A. So we might have slightly different tips and tricks, or maybe slightly different sort of perspectives on it. But I think, first of all, the elephant in the room is that it is hard. So I think when we think about how we want to design these networks for longevity, for sustainability, I think we also really need to think about what are the safeguards that we can put in place to really make sure that it can last for a very long period of time. I think personally for me, I'm quite like a practical / like operational person. So I'm always thinking about who can access, how easy is it to access, is it free, does someone have to pay for it? And if it falls in that second category, who is going to pay for it if it actually needs funding? So I think depending on the availability of resources, depending on the kinds of either ecosystem players that you may have access to, or if you yourself are an ecosystem player and you have like a nascent network of people who are already willing to be members or willing to be mentors or sponsors in some shape or form. And again, it doesn't always have to be monetary. Of course, if someone is willing to contribute funds to maintain the network, sure, we'll take it. But I think in most cases where these networks are quite organic, then we really need to think about ways in which that these networks can actually persist and are sustainable for a long period of time. The other thing that we often think about as well is, do we need to have a constant set of events or initiatives to keep like the group together, to keep them going? So do we need to have maybe like a social event, like a Zoom call, drop in and chill, maybe like once a month? It doesn't really have to cost that much. And maybe it takes 45 minutes of someone's time or 1 hour of someone's time as well. Or is it something that we only want to kind of keep going through many social media platforms, which everyone is already on as well? So then that speaks a little bit more to the accessibility piece and the cost piece as well. Or should we actually leave it up to the members? Should we empower our members to then like come up with their own sort of like leadership structure, come up with their own accountability? And if there's anything else that we can then as maybe ecosystem players support on the side, then let's lend the resources here, let's lend the resources there. So it has a more decentralized approach. But I think Jahan has thoughts about whether a secretariat is actually necessary, like that central force, right? The glue to hold anyone together.
Fantastic. I think we're towards the end of the session, and I would like to invite Sai Priya and Sucharita if they've got some final thoughts as we wrap up now, head towards the wrapping up of the session.
No final thoughts. I'd love to hear what Jahan has to say. I just wanted to make an offer because as a network that has now survived 15 years, we have some learnings, but also some specific learning around putting together a network for women entrepreneurs. I had my responses in chat. I don't want to take up too much time. I just want to say, I don't think we've been able to really answer that. That's the reality. But as a field builder and someone whose reason for being is to to make such networks survive and thrive. The offer that I had was we'd love to work with Katalyst Labs and Chris with Accelerating Asia and Santana with you, because it's interesting that when DAI was putting this proposal together, there was a piece of research that they did before that actually ANDE was involved in. So we know some of the history behind this, and very often such convenings get blamed for just talking here and then forgetting about it after. We'd like to make sure that doesn't happen. So the offer is, this is the beginning. Please stay in touch with us. We will, of course, follow up with you. We'd love to unpack that, like I said in chat, a little more, but we're very invested in trying to make these kinds of networks work. Mumtaz, that's with you as well, given your very specific work in Sri Lanka in the South Asian context, right? So we understand that there are localization elements that we need to look at, but there's also a role to play in holding this together at the regional level. So I'll stop there. But Jahan, final words to you, because I would love to hear your thoughts on that secretariat piece.
So my opinion is that a network will only persist if people find it useful. So whether it is the Google Partners Network, whether it is the Women Leadership Program chat group that we have, or the Nest.io community group that we have, they are constantly active for the simple reason that anyone needs help, whether it's regarding taxes, whether it's regarding a connection, whether it's regarding anything new that is happening, any new opportunity that arises, it is posted into these groups and people help each other. Some people partner up with each other. So if the groups are useful, if they bring some value, they will continue. You cannot artificially make them persist. And that's what I've seen. Even in the Google Partners group, we are from so many different countries. People have made it fun by also including, hey, I'm in Hong Kong right now, and I've met some of the partners here, and put up a picture and stuff like that. So it's kept alive. And I think that is what is necessary to make sure there's valuable information that is exchanged in these networks. And then, so for our women leadership groups, we have all the cohorts joining that initial group so that they meet each other and that network expands instead of just keeping separate groups for each cohort. And I think that has been useful as well because they have learned from each other. So that's my opinion. But yeah, there can be more than one opinion to this question.
Great. Thank you so much. First of all, to Shantana for facilitating this very insightful discussion, and to all of our speakers, Jahan, Chris, for your wonderful insights in the programs that you are running. And I think that's been reiterated that this is the start of a discussion, and we're happy to be able to bring these kind of conversations together. And Jahan, to your point in terms of whether the network is useful, I think what we're hearing is they are, but how can we as enablers kind of keep bolstering and supporting them? So I think Mumtaz touched upon it briefly, but we are going to also be talking in the second session of the day on that gender lens investing piece about how access to finance is a big part of this equation, which is something that is always the first problem that we tackle, and then we move on to supporting women entrepreneurs in other ways. So we will drop the link to the next session in chat, which is happening at 6 p.m. today. Would love for all of you to join us as well, where we're talking about specifically that role of translation in gender lens investing. How do we speak the language to the investors to actually get that money to flow to women entrepreneurs and strengthen ecosystems across the region? So with that, reiterating the thanks to all of you wonderful panelists for joining us today, kicking off the day on gender equality via small and growing business support, and would love to keep this going in the next session as well. Thank you to all the participants who stayed on and would love to see the support in the evening session. Thank you, Shantana, Chris, Jahan, Mumtaz, Laiba, and Pulani. Lovely to hear from you today morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.